Hello, and welcome back to the Angel Face Magic Hour. Today we are here with Dailey Little, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with her. Dailey was my Reiki teacher, and I really am curious to hear about your experience with Reiki, how you found Reiki, and how that has kind of created an influence in your life to start a spiritual business, have a healing practice. So I worked with Dailey in like 2017, 2018, getting my Reiki training with her. And it's been super interesting ever since then. A lot of interesting stuff has come up in my life, a lot of healing. So I would love to hear about your experience with the first time that you received Reiki.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe it's been like that many years already. It feels like just around the corner in one hand, but so much has happened since your attunement. But yeah, I think the first time that I ever experienced Reiki, it was just like a blip in my radar. Like I was in high school and we had a really good family friend and she had just become attuned to Reiki. So we were at a Buddhist center because I was raised really Buddhist. And she was telling us all about how she'd taken this very special Reiki class. And it was really expensive at the time. And I was like, what's Reiki? So she just took her hand and she laid it on the small of my back. And it was so warm, like her hand was warm, and it just felt like this wonderful touch that could have gone on forever. And I was like, oh, wow. And then that was it. I didn't think about it again. I didn't experience it. I didn't have like miracles happen. It was just this beautiful touch. And then years later, in my 20s, I was living in Los Angeles, working in Beverly Hills, and kind of had done all the things in my list of I want to have an epic life kind of list of things. And I was kind of like running out of gas. I felt a little bit like I didn't know what to do with my life. Everything had settled in a certain way. And one day my mom called me and she said, Dailey, and she was living in Northern California. She said, Dailey, you have to come up here. I met this really awesome woman named Pat in the bathroom of the New Living Expo. We were talking and she's amazing and she does Reiki and I think we should take a Reiki class. And I was kind of like, Reiki, Japanese guy who says he can heal anything and everything from like 100 years ago. What is this really going to teach me about anything? You know, like I was a nice, healthy 20 something big ego person, and I'd studied metaphysics throughout my life so far at that point because I was so intuitive and had so many weird magical things happening that I was just trying to understand like why are some people intuitive like this, and why does the world say it's like not real, that it's fake, or that we're charlatans? Like I know something crazy is happening here, and Buddhism just says, oh, don't worry about that. So like I'd been studying all kinds of metaphysics up to this point, so by the time my mother mentioned Pat and Reiki, I was kind of like, meh, whatevs. But my mom kind of posed it as this wonderful thing we could do together. And I thought that that was a really sweet idea. So I flew up north and we took a weekend workshop with this wonderful teacher named Patricia. And that was my beginning with Reiki, literally learning how to teach it. And she said in the class, you could teach this one day. And I kind of shrugged and thought, no, I'll probably never teach this. So that was how that all began.
That's so interesting that you did with your mom.
Yeah. My mom is pretty knowing about things. She just has a knowingness. And I've noticed that every time she makes suggestions, they're usually about 5 years ahead of time. Like she'll suggest something, she'll say something to someone like, you would really do well to take turmeric. Turmeric would be so good for you. And like 5 years later, they have inflammation, and turmeric is exactly what they need. So I think my mom, in some interesting way, just she didn't know tons about what I was going through at the time, but I think that I needed the Reiki. It was something that I really needed, and it became even more prominent in my life maybe 5 years later.
So was that like just a Reiki one workshop?
Mhm. Yeah, it was a Reiki 1 workshop. Patricia, she taught it in a really simple, clean way. There were just two of us in the class, and then she had another student come in for us to lay hands on and practice. And I remember it was taught in her house, in really lovely home, and all the lights were off, and I was like we walked into a room and sat down, and then the light just, like, she's like, oh, it doesn't work, like it blew out. And she was saying how sometimes the energy just caused things to blow out. And I was like, what am I getting into? So we learned in the dark, it just with the sunlight coming through the windows. And that was my beginning. And then I took Reiki to like a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years later,
Did
with a
your
different
mom
teacher.
do it too, or no?
No, no, she doesn't like do hands-on. She doesn't work with it directly, but my mom for many years was an occupational therapist, and she definitely has that. She's in that healing profession, right? So
Yeah,
she interacts with a lot of people, and I think that her healing energy just comes through. So it still works through her and with her. Yeah.
amazing. And then how much longer was it before you started teaching Reiki?
Let's see. So maybe, those first few years after I took Reiki 1, I had kind of a really awesome miracle experience in the month or two right after I took it, but just helping someone else. But beyond that, I didn't really practice it a lot. I didn't do tons with it. It felt as if the Reiki was working me. So
Just working on you.
yeah, I would have moments where my whole body would just light up with that heat, and I could feel things, just emotional pieces that were trapped in my somatic body, just melting away. And when I would go places like crystal shops or expos, sometimes I would speak with people, and I always knew when they needed healing because my Reiki would turn on and I could feel that energy beginning to flow. But maybe like, so that was a couple of years of just me feeling like I was being worked over by energy. And then I just knew when it was time to take another class, and I took another class. So I think I may have, after level 2, I think I may have started my practice after level 2. I don't think I think like I took Reiki Master in the first year of my healing practice, because I felt that having the master level would ground everything and give me a better positioning and a better understanding of what I was doing. So maybe that was for, I don't know, like 6 years, 4 years, 5 years. I'm not sure. I'm so
Something
bad with
like
that.
that.
Yeah, it took some time, but it's so crazy because I've had students that like take a level 1 class, they're already working on people right away because they're ready for that. But I had a lot of stuff in my life that was really suppressed, and emotional pieces that I'd really pushed pretty deep. So I was living a pretty good surface life, but there was like a dark and dangerous sea underneath. And I think I truly believe that the Reiki was what helped me to start to open that up and integrate things, because I just didn't have tools before then. I didn't know how to do that. So it took some time for me to actually open up more deeply and just see what I was holding inside and what I was about. And I needed to do that for me before I was ready to start a practice. I didn't want to start my practice. I only did it because my guides told me to. That's where I was at that time.
So people were demanding.
No, not even. Like nobody was demanding. I was running a metaphysical web store and selling things online, and I loved it. I was a magical shop. I sold candles, and I would find rare antiquities and vintage magical items through my own hunt. And so I used my art history background to value things and figure out what was what. So I was selling online, and I had a baby. And so I was selling online and having a baby and going through all the things and figuring out relationship, dealing with all kinds of stuff. And then one night while I was walking my son to bed, just back and forth, wearing a tread in the bedroom, going into a trance state without realizing it, I suddenly heard this voice, and this inner voice. It was like definitely this guide voice that was like, "You need to start a healing practice. Call it Healing Heart Reiki." And I definitely did not agree with that voice. I was like, no way. I love my web store. I don't want a physical place. What if I don't want to touch people? What if people's feet stink? What am I going to do? Like, I was worried. um, but I've always trusted my guides, and I trust my heart and my inner voice. So after my son actually fell asleep, I went to the computer, and this inner voice kept telling me crazy things. I was having an argument in my mind with spirit, and I found on Craigslist, in an area that I'd never looked on Craigslist, I found 2 spaces available, and one space had no pictures, no description, nothing. And I just thought it was crazy. But my guides were like, call it, like, send a message, you're going to do this. So I sent a message to this person, and she said, oh, well, we can meet tomorrow or sometime that week, right? And I just really thought, you know, this is going to be terrible. And I, all the way driving to this location, I told myself, I'm not doing it unless there's high ceilings. I'm not doing it unless there's a window with tons of light. I'm not doing it unless there's enough space for me to make a mark in this office, because it was a shared space with 2 other practitioners. And so I had all of these like things I was setting up to bow out. And I got to the space, and it was the perfect space. I had no more possible objections. I was so shocked, in fact, that I kind of walked in and I looked around and I was like, ah, I could do that. I could do this. And the person I was meeting was my office mate, Amanda, who I still love and adore to this day. I didn't know then that it would become this really beautiful, really healing friendship. But, she was kind of like, well, hold your horses. Like, many people have tried to be in this space. We have to see if you're the right person for this space, because we're creating something really special here, right? I was like, oh, sure, whatever. I'm going to be here. I know it. And so that was, getting into that space and meeting with Amanda and listening to my guides. It was just step by step, me kind of being led into this practice that really changed my entire life. And I didn't want to do it, but I do feel that the best things I've ever done in life have been when I've listened to that inner knowing. So I just listened, and I gave myself permission that if I didn't like laying hands on people within the first whatever amount of people, that I could just stop. I didn't have to go whole hog. I could just not do it. I was just willing to try.
Amazing. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
How long were you at that one place?
Oh, I think a long time. 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What year is this?
2021.
I feel
almost
like
almost 2022.
I was at that place until about 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so like probably like a decade. Yeah. And I would have stayed there forever. I loved that place, but it was in Railroad Square in downtown Santa Rosa, right next to where the new train was coming in. So when they started testing for that, it was so loud. The train would come in and it would honk and honk on the street, and the whole building would kind of shudder, and my office was right there. So as much as I loved it and I wanted to stay in the space, I loved the landlord, I loved everything. it started to create a lot of stress for me. Like I was laying hands, and my beautiful clients, bless them, were like, "Oh, I grew up near a train track. This doesn't bother me at all," even though like the train was like roaring through, right?
Super loud.
So they were so sweet, but every I came to this point where I could tell when the train was coming from miles away because I'd hear like the faraway horn, and my whole body would tense up with stress, like, oh my God. So I knew at that point that I had to go, because Reiki is about relaxation. It's about dropping back into your being and knowing that you're safe to have a happy, joyful life. And so it doesn't make sense to offer Reiki healing sessions when you're like looking over your shoulder and because of a train coming right at your building every day. So yeah,
And then so you moved into where you are now right
I
after that?
did. Yeah, I did. Mhm.
That's where I met you and was
Oh
the
wow. Yeah.
classes. You took my classes where you are now.
Yeah, yeah. This is so yeah, I went from that space, which was really sunny and bright, into this sort of tall gray Victorian. And for me, it was a really big shift because I had been living in Sebastopol and working in Santa Rosa. And I thought, I would love to do a live work. I would love to see how, like, sort of live work, community co op kind of thing could happen. So I came into this space with really specific ideas. Like, I wanted the bottom floor of the Victorian, the front room, to kind of become a community space for larger classes, and then have a private session room. And then the upstairs rooms I ultimately wanted to turn into private session rooms and rent out, because by the point that I'd moved here, I'd already been leasing to different people in the past. So I did have people that came to me and said, "Hey, I want to lease one of those spaces and offer massage, or offer," there were a couple of things people wanted to offer. But Spirit had its own ideas. I came into this building, it was haunted, but nice spirits, but just there was a lot of energy to kind of reconcile. And the front space ended up feeling too small. It could only fit about 30 people max if we stuffed this like sardines. And so that didn't work. So I realized really quickly that the space was not going to be this healing centery space that I had hoped to move into, try a live work, and then move out of in order for the business to thrive. Um, I realized pretty quickly that it was for me to do some personal healing work for myself in my life, work like next level work that I just hadn't gotten to, didn't know how to crack open. And um, yeah, and it was great. It was profound.
Amazing. Yeah, I drive by, like every time I drive by your house, I go, "Hi, Dailey." I don't know if you can sense that, but
Sometimes I feel people. I do. I'm like,
I'm always like,
oh,
"Dailey."
there's
You're
love out there on the river of cars. Yeah. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful space. And I feel like it's nice to have something, if well, it's a house, so it feels like you're comfortable. You're not like in a weird classroom or like a warehouse or something. It feels like, oh, I'm at my like someone's house and I'm just here to like,
Yeah.
yeah, relax and receive.
I mean, some houses can be kind of creepy and shady, I do have to say. But yeah, I mean, it's very comfortable. And I think for me, I just feel like even when I began my business, Healing Heart Reiki, I mean, maybe not right when I began, because again, I was a little bit like, why am I doing this? Because my guide said, whatever. But that first year, I got really clear about why it needed to happen and what I was doing with Healing Heart Reiki and where my heart was in it. And so I always had this intention that I wanted to at least be able to demonstrate as a healer all of the different ways that healing could look and be, and the healing life could be. And I hoped that all of the students that I taught from that first year onward could always come to me and like learn both from my successes and from my huge mistakes, and like learn from the things that learn from some of my funkiness too. And so the whole next step of like moving into the live work, just being willing to reach and try something that was different, I kind of went, well, this is great. Like, hopefully everybody who is a part of this community who's witnessing me is learning from this and learning, okay, well, how can you make it work inside of a house if it's your house? What are the types of boundaries you need to think about if you want to start a healing practice from a personal space? Right. So I
Yeah,
think
I
the
mean,
whole
you just don't
thing,
want people like coming over at random times or
right?
whatever.
Yeah, it requires boundaries. Like, and it's so, yeah, it's been this great learning experience for me. And I think it's also been helpful for others. Like, it's allowed me to have the knowledge to kind of share a few do's and don'ts about personal practice. And, I've worked from festivals and fairs and professional offices and home spaces, outside, um, retreats. So, we share the info. We all learn this way. We all rise.
Yeah, I think like in over the pandemic, I like basically now work from home, and it's been so helpful for me, like emotionally, to be like, okay, like I don't want to work right now, like I'm not gonna do work, but it's easy to work all of the time. I feel like that's the hard
Yes.
thing for me, is having the boundaries of like, okay, like it's nighttime, like I don't need to be doing this right
Yeah.
now. But I get inspired, I get the ideas and then everything's there. So I
Totally.
think
Especially
that
when
can
you
be.
love what you do.
What do you find the hardest about that? Like keeping motivation, or doing like actually resting?
I think it's both, right? Because when we are out of balance, it's like the chakra system. Like, sometimes your chakras can be out of balance and they'll both be spinning too fast and also spinning too slow in different places, right? So, um, for me, the live work has been a huge lesson in balance. And I think that, because I have a kid, my child, he's like the canary in the cave. Like, if I disappear from my day to day stuff too much into work, he's like, yo, mom, not cool. So I think that having him has actually helped me to see more clearly what the challenges are. And I would say that I tend towards being a workaholic. My mother very much had that same type of ethic, and I experienced that growing up. So I could just go into a creative space for hours and do hours of energy work, hours of healing work, hours of writing and creating and drawing and graphic design, and not come up for air. Because I was raised really like spiritual, where we did meditate a couple of hours a day. That's like my happy place. That's my safe, normal place. It's like nun life. But I've learned how important it is to stop, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, drink water, take walks, and then go do things in life outside of spirituality, right? Go to the lake, try the new axe throwing place at the epicenter, like whatever it is,
Ooh, I want to do
I
that.
know, right? So, field trip. But yeah, like, I've learned that that balance has to be there, because otherwise, as energy healers, if we're too much in the energy, we're not rooted, we're not grounded in our earthly experience, and it short circuits the system and our life purpose.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that. Like when I first started doing Reiki, I remember you had to show me like how to stand, because I felt like I was just floating outside my body for whatever 25, 28 years of my life.
Yeah,
That it like was almost like I would get nauseous when I would run the healing energy, because it was like so intense, and I wasn't used to being like grounded. So it definitely
yeah,
took me, I feel like, a year, maybe longer, of practicing to like be balanced somewhat inside my body. But eating, I think, is the hardest thing for me, is like remembering to eat food, and like, yeah, creating those normal human needs. Like, okay, I got to take
mhm,
my shower, I got to do this, like those actual everyday things, I think, can be really easy to miss or just to push through, because you're like, okay, I'm into what I'm doing right now, I'll do that
yeah.
later. But then you just end up feeling run down.
Yeah, yeah, it's another boundaries thing, right? It's all boundaries, and I can get the same way. But what I've learned is, of course, if I do push off that eating because I'm in some great creative moment or healing moment, then I get hungry and I don't realize I'm hungry right away. And then when I do get hungry, then I want to gorge on things that aren't healthy for my body. It's not the actual fine fuel my body needs because the hunger becomes so big, it just wants immediate satiation, right? So I've really seen how those patterns make this huge, huge difference in my overall health. Um, Plus, it's not really good to go into constant like feast, famine, starvation modes, you know,
Not the
right?
best for your sugars and everything.
Yeah. So, like, even right before we started this, I said, oh, hold on, let me turn off my alarms. My alarms are still on. And that's because literally in my iPhone, I use the clock function that has like, timers and alarms. And I actually have alarms set for 3 times a day that remind me to stop and have a healthy, nourishing meal, or like to stop and to make a nice dinner. And it sounds so silly, right? But I grew up in a family of artists, of super highly creative, like probably high functioning, like creative types who were just throwing paint all over the place, smelting freaking, brass or whatever it is. And I think sometimes with that, like there's like this element of intensity and drama, and we have to finish this one thing, or like this deep commitment. And not all artists are that way, but mine were. So something as simple as just setting an alarm to do a basic function, I doing that has taught me how to reestablish my healthy boundaries around the basic things in life, because so many of the people around me were always focused on the not basic things, the massive things. I've got all that, but now I'm working on the little things, right?
That makes sense to me. I think that I should probably do that. That's a smart idea. Yeah, I think too, like you show me too about like having a planner and like putting in the planner, you put in like not only like inspirations, like things how you want to feel, but like blocks of time where you're just doing nothing. Like I
Yeah.
think you called them like, I forget what you called them, like priestess time or something. I forget what you called it, but like just literally doing nothing or just meditating or being in that like blank space. And that I feel like has really helped me, that concept of like relaxing, but it's not like, I feel like most people when they relax, it's like you watch TV or whatever, but you're still
Right.
consuming, you're still like listening, even if it's just like listening to music.
Right.
To have something when there's silence, I feel like that's so important that I've been
Yeah.
trying to like put that into my calendar. But I liked the
Yeah.
idea of like, yeah, actually writing it down, actually having it there to look at. So it's not, it's so easy to ignore if you don't like put it down, write it down.
It is, right. And that's like for me again, it's back to those little blocks of like just like having to set a timer to know when to make my lunch or eat it. Because it's too easy at noon to go, oh, I'll just have lunch at 1. And then it's too easy at 1 to say, oh, but I'm so close to finishing this thing. I'll just pick it up before I go pick up my kid at 2 or whatever it is, right? So having those real stop checks, and it's the same. I probably called it my priestess time,
I think that's what you
because
called it.
um, one of the things that I learned, like through my, like I've been a priestess of the goddess Isis since for a long time, since forever, for a long time. I got that call
Lifetimes.
when I was like 13 years old. I had this really profound experience with Isis, and then I ignored her for like till my 20s, and then she came back in really, really powerfully, and has actually led me, like I've been led to different teachers and experiences and really cultivated my priestess craft over the years. But one thing that I've seen is this, um, like our society is just always so go, go, go. And I think it's probably like an outgas of the fact that we are a capitalistic, consumerist society, that we're constantly being sold to, you know, like whether we're on social media or watching TV, or you're sitting at a beautiful outdoor concert with the program that has sales in it, we're constantly being inundated. So um, it actually took a real conscious effort for me to decide and to acknowledge the importance of having spaces that really just connect me back to the earth and back to the regular patterns of living, right? Like tending to the garden, washing my dishes in my house, making my bed, things that have nothing to do with consuming and have everything to do with tending, growing, building in this really close to the earth kind of way. And I see that as connected to the work of the priestess who has to learn how to, what's the word? Like downshift, energetically come back into grounding, back into earth, if the priestess is to be a vessel for any kind of divine channel or messages, right? We can't do that if we're running around like chickens with our head cut off and our ego is activated. So I like to put on really great tunes, really great Spotify playlists, and make a vibe and
Yeah, you
just
were talking about like getting all the blankets and like snacks and stuff. I'm like, oh, I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I teach
Making
that. I
it
teach that in
cozy.
some of my goddess courses, like a circle of self or a circle of one, where you literally create a magical circle and you make a feast and you honor yourself as divine and you rest.
Yeah, we talked about it. I can't remember when, but in one of the classes
Yeah.
I took with you.
Yep.
And like, yeah, creating a sacred place.
Mhm. And it's like so crazy because these aren't new ideas, but they're almost revolutionary because people just don't do it. It's amazing how many women I talk to have never created that kind of time for themselves because they're constantly responding and reacting to society or to the needs of the people that they love and that love them. And they don't know how to set that first initial boundary for self love and self pleasure and self care.
Yeah, I think that's like so hard for a lot of people to rest or to stop, or like, yeah, to receive love like from
Yeah.
yourself. I think that is like
Yeah.
been a hard lesson for me. I'm sure a lot of other people
Yeah.
like being open to receive from, yeah, yourself or the universe or other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I learned how to do that for the probably the first time ever through a cacao um, medicine bundle carrier training course that I took with this really wonderful woman in the UK. And her class was wonderful. And it was the first time that I slowed down just for me. I was like, wow, everyone should do this. If we all did this, we'd have world peace. Like there'd be so few issues, you know?
Yeah, just to stop and breathe for a
Yeah.
minute.
Yep.
I'd love to talk more about this Isis priest. So you would describe yourself as a priestess of Isis. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's probably right on. Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm
Yeah,
ordained.
like she says. And so
Yeah.
that was something that was in your life before you found Reiki.
Yeah. Yep. Um, yeah, because as I said, I was really intuitive. I'd had a couple of really profound experiences in childhood with energy and being psychic and intuitive. And so um, I started this journey. So I started checking out all of the books that I could at the library about magic and paganism, Wicca. I started going to the church with people, churches, with friends. I went to Christian camp for a few years. I loved it. I was just hungry for metaphysical understanding. And in the Buddhism that I was raised in, I began reading source texts, just trying to find out more information. But as I said, Buddhism was like, don't get distracted by being psychic. That's not the great work. I was like, whatever, like, what do you mean? It's awesome. Can I
I want to
fly
know.
too? Yeah. So I think that it was during a home initiation that I did when I had this amazing vision of Isis. And I was like probably about 13. I was um, yeah, so, yeah, like middle school. And in this vision, I saw multiple goddesses, and most of them I knew. And then all of a sudden, she was there, and I was like, "Who are you?" I didn't recognize her iconography. I didn't recognize who she was at all. And she said, "I'm Isis," and I just didn't get it. And she said, "Well, I'm here for you." Um, Basically, she's like, "You belong to me," but I didn't really get it. And she said, "It doesn't matter. It's okay, but her time will come." So in my 20s, by the time I was in my 20s living in LA, I was doing costume design and um, just all kinds of things, dancing. And I had a pretty good life, but I was still seeking answers to the same questions. And looking back, I think that that was really also just connected to me feeling that there could be more in my life, that I was hungry for something I didn't know what. And now I was hungry to crack the ice on that deep sea of deeper inner emotion and desire in my own being that I hadn't cracked open because I hadn't given myself permission to. I didn't know how to, right? I was too busy trying to live kind of this good life based on what I'd been taught, what everybody else said a good life was. Um, so when Isis came back, it was because I was doing a lot of metaphysics at the time, and I'd taken a lot of different trainings, and I was starting to amass some pretty good energy, around these things. And I was still curious, so I was trying all kinds of things. I was astral traveling a lot during the day. I was like really working on these magical techniques that people said, "Oh, it's impossible," and I was really working on understanding them on the next level and doing a lot of them. And it was like, "Oh, this is amazing." And so one night, Isis came to me during a full moon ritual, and she showed up in my inner vision as I was sitting there at my window, bathed in moonlight. And she basically, I'd had another ritual before that that was a little bit crazy and a little bit intense, where I'd had what we call aspecting, or like a possession by a deity, right? Where the spirit of a god or goddess comes through your body and into you, moves and speaks through you. And I'd never experienced that on that level before. Um, so many indigenous cultures talk about this, right? In the Yoruban tradition, it's like a person that is actually, that person is called a horse, and they're ridden by the deity. It's so crazy to me that it happens everywhere in all of these cultures, and yet here in American mainstream culture, we still say possession's not a real thing. It's or yeah, or it's evil and you're gonna die because it's like yeah. There's just no
Do they
space for
also call
anything.
it mounting?
Mounting.
Mountings?
There's a lot of names that the work goes by, right? And so, or you're either possessed by something evil, or you're
Crazy.
crazy. And I put that in quotes, right? Like there's no space for you to be a sane, healthy person that has experiences with the divine in this very personal, embodied way. So I'd had this amazing experience with the goddess Sekhmet, and that's a whole nother story. And it was really intense. And it left me in this really kind of deeply moved space. When Sekhmet left my body, I felt bereft, as if I'd literally like lost a lover, like someone had died. And it was so intense that it took me like several days to just come back to a normal grounded state, because I received so much information and so much energy from that possessed experience that it literally took me years to unpack it. Like to this day, I'm still like, "Oh, Sekhmet saw that. Wow." Like there was so much that changed from that one instance. So once I recovered, I was like, "I got to do that again." That was awesome. I need to do this all the time. And so during a full moon ritual, Isis came down, and she was in my inner vision, and she said, "No." Like, "You're going to get yourself killed. Like, you now have amassed enough energy in your studies that you could perhaps actually harm yourself if you don't have an appropriate teacher." Right. So um, that was the beginning of my deeper work with her as a priestess, because she basically said to me in this ritual, I will send you to the right places. You just have to go." And then she did for many years. So within weeks of that, the first thing that happened was I was driving home from work and I suddenly felt this deep heart knowing, this heart tug. And my inner voice just said, like, go down that street. And it was like a street I'd never really gone down. I don't know. LA is huge, right? There's tons of streets that I've never explored. So I just I listened because that's what I do, right? So I turned down the street and this gnawing feeling wouldn't stop. It was like, keep going, keep going, keep going. So I literally was like led through these streets in an area of LA that I didn't know. And I kind of thought I was going crazy. Like, I can't believe that I have this strong gut vibe or heart vibe sending me somewhere strange in LA. Maybe I'm just losing my mind, you know? But that feeling stopped. Like, I went over a bridge. I was like, oh God, it was an overpass, right? But near some water. And then I was led down and I ended up literally stopping in front of this small building, and it was a magical shop. It was a new one that had only been like, she'd only opened a few months earlier. I'd never heard of it before. I didn't know it existed. She was brand new there. And I walked up to the front really tripped out. Like, I can't believe that I was literally driving home and now I'm miles away in a totally different region, like area of LA, in front of a new magic shop that I didn't even know existed when I thought I knew all of the shops, right? So right there on the glass at the door, it says Mysteries of Isis. And it was a 4-week initiation to the Mysteries of Isis, being taught by a lovely woman that I had no clue who she was. And it was slated to start that week. So I
Perfect
was like,
timing.
are you like, whoa. So it's moments like that in my practice that have convinced me that, like, there's so much that's real in the world that we're so quick to dismiss, right? So I went inside. I told the woman there, like, I didn't know you existed. And she's like, oh yeah, we're new. And I said, I want to sign up for this ISIS class. She said, wow, it's really popular. You're literally the last spot on the roster. So I just gave her my money. And as she was ringing me up, the phone rang. And I'll never forget this because it was just shocking, right? Like, the phone rang and it was someone else inquiring about the class. And she had to turn them away. And I was like, what just happened? Like, was that urgent heart vibe because that needed to happen right now or what? Right. So I took that 4-week class and learned all of these basic things that I never knew about ISIS. And some of it I was like, oh, I knew that, you know, but it was really profound. And the initiation ceremony was beautiful. And that was probably the real official beginning of me kind of stepping into that role of priestess. And if you'd asked me then, I wouldn't have called myself a priestess. I might have said I was a witch or a healer or a curious person. Um, and that I loved the word priestess, but I didn't really fully understand what it meant, you know. But that was probably the beginning.
You're a reverend too, aren't you?
I am. I'm ordained. I can do weddings, funerals. I have not done in the past couple of years, but I have done them in the past. Yeah.
Official titles.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
amazing. I love that story.
Yeah.
Can you tell the people listening, if they don't know anything about Isis, like, how would you explain her? Like, she's a goddess. Could you just
Yeah.
give us like a brief explanation of
Sure.
who she is and why someone might be interested in connecting with her or
Sure.
learning more
So
about her?
Isis is a goddess. She's an Egyptian goddess. She has her roots in Egypt. And she is often called the goddess of 10,000 names because she is an all goddess, which means that she has many different aspects, many different names, and many different associations connected to her. She was so popular in ancient Egypt that um, people just like they gave her all kinds of different epithets. You know, they just really saw her as all of these different sources. And even when the temples of Egypt fell, she managed that transition and still existed inside of Roman temples alongside Grecian gods. And she has made her way all around the world in that way because she is so beloved and popular. Her original origin stories paint her as a woman on Earth who mastered earth magic and was very clever and intelligent and wanted to become a god. She wanted to rise up beyond being human, and she figured out how, and her myths explain that. So I think of Isis as um, a model for us to understand how we can activate our own sovereign, empowered nature and how we can rise up in our divinity within our everyday lives. Her name means the seat or the throne. She's the seat. And she was the goddess in ancient Egypt that made kings and pharaohs, kings, queens, pharaohs. She was the one that blessed their reigns. So you could not be a king or queen or pharaoh unless you had the blessing and the seat of Isis. And I think in that way, she's a wonderful goddess for anybody who's really working on their own sovereignty and learning how to like own themselves, their identity, their boundaries, their heart. I could go on about her forever, but I would say that that's the most basic I can think of. I should stop there.
Oh, that's great. That's amazing. Yeah, I think it's so interesting because it's one of those things that comes from one story and then it really leaks into all these other different religions or pantheons and ideas like that. She's like connected to so much that we wouldn't know about.
Right. Well, and she has just, even within Egypt, she has so many fascinating mythic stories, and they really do track her growth and development as an ambitious woman. And then we get to see her in the role of being a wife and like married or devoted. We get to see her in the role of raising up a kingdom because she becomes a queen and like her stories around that. And we get to watch her grieve when she loses all of the things that she's worked for. We get to watch her grief. We learn about mourning. We learn about what to do when life gives you something that you just cannot process, right? All of those teachings are in her stories. And then ultimately she has a baby through magic. So we learn all about magic and we learn all about motherhood and what she goes through when her baby is growing up and she's like, "Oh no, I have to protect my baby." And she does all of the sort of, overbearing mothering things. So she really does walk us through these gateways of emotionality and the gateways of our own heart, the development of our chakra system, and our movement through the sacred archetypes that we go through as humans: maidens, mothers, crones or elders, warriors, fathers, elders, wise men, medicine, all of these, whatever we want to call these triple archetypes that are, we all go through them. They're all existing within us all at once, these phases of life that we encounter and live through. And her stories really show us some tips and tricks and the magic behind how to approach that with grace.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so interesting. There is like a temple kind of around here. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's there's so many. Isis gets around, I have to say. She will pop up in the most interesting places. But the most overt place is the Temple of Isis in Geyserville at Isis Oasis here in Northern California. And that's been around for several decades. And it is a retreat center and also an official temple that's devoted to the goddess Isis in her many names, and also known as the Mother Earth goddess or Earth itself. So that's a sanctuary for wild cats and animals,
Oh, I
as
didn't know
well
that.
as a creative haven. Many artists like to go there to retreat, to nourish and recover. And there are annual convocations to the goddess Isis. It's currently headed by De Tracy Regula, and many other wonderful priestesses are there. Priests and priestesses are there or move through there. It's fantastic. Yeah, it was founded by my priestess mama, Lady Lorian Vignier. Yeah.
Amazing. So that's what, like an hour, couple hours from here?
I think
Or is
it's
that more
maybe,
Southern California?
no, it's like maybe 40 minutes north of downtown Santa Rosa.
Oh, really?
It's really close. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it
And
was like
there's,
closer to Southern California for some reason.
no, it's right up here. It's right off of the river up in Geyserville, all the wine and the grapes up there. There's a huge great tree on the property that's super old. People love to visit. It's a historic monument. Um, and that the property itself used to be run by people of the Baha'i faith. So there's a long history of spirit on that property. And it has also been a grounding pad and a gateway for the International Fellowship of Isis that's connected with and affiliated with the Temple of Isis Geyserville. They're separate organizations, but they're kind of sister organizations. They work closely together. Lady Olivia Durden Robertson, who founded the Fellowship of Isis in the early, mid 1900s. I need to check my history on that. She is also now deceased and passed on. The fellowship continues, but not that long ago, she would come out to Isis Oasis and be a part of these huge convocations and would help new priests and priestesses find their wings. It was really lovely.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
she's another one of my priestess mamas. So, yeah, but Isis gets around. The Rosicrucian Center is in San Jose. That's another huge anchor and mainstay that is connected to ancient Egypt as well, and to some of those myths and stories.
Do you feel like she's connected to like Mary and all those stories too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is said in
Very
many
similar
circles.
story.
Oh my God. Well, if you look at the iconography for Mary and Jesus and like the mother holding the baby, that Mary, that iconography was directly taken from ancient statues of Isis holding the baby Horus. That was an intentional decision uh, on the part of artists and priests in Christianity to help establish the faith in areas where the Isis religions and the Egyptian religions were conquered, right? So, I mean, I love looking at art. Art tells you a lot about how things evolve and develop, but definitely, like, it is said that Jesus, when he went on his whole thing and studied, that he studied Buddhism and that he also studied with Isis and with the temples of Isis in Egypt. And the Isean priestesses taught him about love and energy and pleasure and forgiveness and all the things.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
How
her
do you,
energy does. Her energy is connected. I think there are a lot of people that could speak more to that than I can.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. It's yummy.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing. So do you feel like incorporating the goddess work is connected to the energy work, or do you think they're kind of separate practices for you?
I think they can be separate practices for people, but for me, it's all part of one. You know, I feel that in many ways, when Reiki came into my life, I didn't realize this at the time, but it was really a profound healing that I needed. As a woman who is African American and Japanese, who's always kind of lived between cultures and between worlds, and who doesn't look Japanese, and so has also, like, I've often also felt like there are parts of me that just people don't see and understand, right? That I think in many ways Reiki, when it came in, was very healing for the cultural part of me because it reconnected me with aspects of my Japanese heritage because of Reiki's roots, but also it helped me to reconcile aspects of the masculine divine and like having this beautiful healing energy come through and this loving energy, I think allowed me to feel loved and safe and stable while there was still this, like, I don't know how to explain it. It felt like it was a healing around all of the ways that we look at the wounded masculine divine. And there were imbalances in Christianity. I'm not saying Christianity is imbalanced. I have known wonderful, amazing Christians who changed my lives, who have tons of beautiful love and healing. And Jesus is like all of that is very powerful. It's not the religion, it's how people work with it, right? Yeah. And so I feel like people have sometimes done terrible things in the name of religion that have created wounds. And so parts of me that were feeling wounded around patriarchal religion were able to really heal inside of the structures of Reiki and the energy that Reiki provided, which felt like this very warming, healing, and at the time for me, masculine energy. That was just how it came for me, right? And I think that created a foundation for me to start to really explore the deeper aspects of who I was in my feminine, because we all have both masculine and feminine, right? So I think there were parts of me that were really out of balance in my feminine and like seeking attention for various reasons and doing things because I craved love and acceptance. And there were just parts of me that didn't understand how to simply be inside of my own skin and my own being. So Isis was there offering this love and this healing and these teachings through her myths and archetypes and through the vibrational frequency of the energy itself. And her teachings were all about trusting yourself, like trusting myself, trusting that I could just feel what I need to feel, trusting my own intelligence, trusting my own perspectives about the world and about life, right? And then learning how to have compassion, having compassion for Isis is the goddess of wanderers, wayfarers, sailors at sea, people who are lost, people who are homeless, people who've been injured. That's just one aspect. She's also like, we could do a whole other side. And so it was like learning to look at the wounds and the mysteries in the world, and instead of passing judgment, to just have compassion and to see myself in all of them. I think this is a huge aspect of what the divine feminine teaches us, how to be present in the chaos, how to like create and be present in what is, and also how to manifest inside of what is. And you have to take into account what is. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. You guys can let us know.
Yeah. There's so many takes on this, right? So I think the energies to me worked together because I began to realize that the Reiki was kind of giving me this life force to do something with. That's how I felt at the time when I was working with it when I first started. And then Isis was giving me the space to heal so that I knew what to do with. And that has gone back and forth, like, you know, it's all together. It's all together. So I can't separate them. I've done incredible magic channeling goddess energy and divine energy of Isis, and those healings tend to open people's hearts and their creativity. They tend to have more of like a Kundalini rising experience from that. Whereas the Reiki tends to activate their upper chakras in a very different way. And that also can lead to great shifts and openings, but they work together.
Amazing. So are you still doing the goddess circles?
Oh yeah, for a while I was doing them once a month. No, I decided to stop because why not? I'm always trying new things. But I still do rituals sometimes. I've been doing them on Zoom, and they're all a little bit different. I've been doing meditations, finding ways to bring those teachings about the goddess forth. And likely next year, I will go back to teaching um, an extended Isis magic class. Usually, like for a while, I was doing it every other year, like a 9-month class. Every other year, I would do this long class with lots of magic and metaphysics and how to tend your priestessing practice or just be devotional, how to work with Egyptian magic. I think it's time to do that again.
Maybe that's why I'm asking.
It's so fun. It's really powerful. I've learned a lot by holding that space, you
Yeah.
know.
I went to one of the circles you did, but it was like each month was or each one was a different goddess. So we
Yeah.
talked about Sekhmet
Yeah. I think that was
and
like 3 years ago for,
something like that.
yeah, Sekhmet, Nut, Hathor, Isis. Yeah. Probably Thoth was in there, Jehuti. Yep.
But I thought it was very interesting just to be able to hear the story and the archetypes and all those energies connected to these gods or goddesses and like how that connects to your life. It's not just like facts, it's more
Right.
like feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth because I have finally reconciled at this point in my life that I am through and through an Isis priestess, that I love the Egyptian stories. I love the Egyptian deities. I've had profound experiences and I've received so many boons and gifts from learning and just being open to that energy and to working with them. And because of that, I often want to teach it to everyone. But sometimes things are just for us,
Yeah.
or we need them. Sometimes we need things to be just for us. So sometimes I teach, and other times I feel like it's really just there in my
Your
energy field and
personal
my,
practice.
yeah. And then sometimes it bleeds through when it needs to bleed through. When there are people that are asking for it, it tends to come up and out, you know. But um the Reiki, I continue to teach after all of these years, and I never thought I would. I thought that would be kind of a flash in the pan or a place to begin. But the more I've taught it through hundreds of students, yeah, like hundreds, the more I've realized how we all really need these basic tools for how to heal ourselves and other people. So I found that it makes a really great foundational practice that people learn before learning the Egyptian mysteries, because you can do Reiki and not mess anything up. You don't you don't have to,
Yeah, you don't have to
it's
know what you're doing to do it.
yeah, it's very user friendly. And then with Egyptian stuff, you can kind of create a little bit of havoc in your life if you're not approaching it the right way. So I usually ask students of the Egyptian mysteries to have learned Reiki with me as the foundation. And Reiki is different everywhere you go. And I think people just go where they need to go. In my classes now and even before, I often mix in aspects of the Egyptian work or elements of the goddess or the divine feminine, because that's who I am. And so Reiki classes at Healing Heart Reiki are this combination of traditional Usui Reiki, because I love that history and that's awesome. And also like Healing Heart method, which has a lot more to do with creating those energetic boundaries, developing those psychic awareness skills, learning how to be fully present and mindful, incorporating Eastern and Western Reiki techniques, and also the Egyptian metaphysical techniques. So, yeah.
Are your classes all online right now?
Yeah. Um, I will likely go back to offering retreats next year. Maybe I keep going back and forth about one in Hawaii and maybe one up in Tahoe area. But gosh, I resisted going online for like years. My guides were telling me, you need to go online. You need to go online. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I don't want to. I fought it. I fought them. This was the one thing I did not listen to. They were like, you must go online. Trust us. You need to go online. And I was even teaching my students, I was like, make sure you're online savvy. You got to be going like, no, if you're teaching classes, learn how to share it through social media. So I was even teaching that, but I wasn't going online and teaching classes. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like,
So it's gotta do this, I guess.
oh, I think this is why they were telling me to go online because people need this healing and now they're all online. And so since I made that shift, I've loved it because I've realized before people would just come to classes as like a little mini retreat to learn something and get away from their lives. And that's fine. That's great. But online, what I've noticed about students is because of how we've set it up, right? Students are learning and then they're learning how to do the Reiki in their lives. They're breaking through all of those resistance and learning how to lay hands on themselves or learning how to heal with the concepts of Reiki right away in their own lives. So we have the online member portal with all the training material inside of it. And then we've got the actual classes, which are with me in Zoom. And then we've got like a monthly membership aspect where basically anybody that's taken classes with me can come once a month to office hours and continue to ask questions and develop deeper, right? As well as online Reiki shares and all that. So it's a whole thing now we've established online. And what I'm seeing, having now attuned some people who've learned online with me all the way up until master level, which is still in person, that many of them, like, it's actually deeper. It's actually deeper.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. It blew my mind. I was
I
like,
feel
what?
like it's like you have to let go of that perception that like, yeah, the energy has to be transferred from me to you
Yeah.
rather than just from God or whatever source
It's
to
always etheric
you.
anyways,
Yeah,
right? Like even if it's
already
me and you
doing
and
that.
yeah, like that's what Reiki is. It's literally non-physical energy. So yeah, I mean, I think that is the big thing, but the attunements have gone really powerfully. I've had students that have literally just like they've smelled like the flowers in my room while receiving an attunement. I was like, whoa, you didn't even see the flowers. They're behind the screen. So I think these little things just remind me of how connected we really all are. And for me, the biggest win of the shift online has been seeing how many people need it and that they're actually able to really incorporate the techniques and the meditations and the metaphysics right away in their lives through the class. And a lot of the questions that students I used to ask me in person were questions that came about because they only had one day to learn the process,
Yeah.
right? They only had a few times with me. And it's like now there's this well of multimedia material that they can revisit, and then they're still able to meet with me monthly to have that real human connection, because I believe in that. As teachers, I believe in lineage, right? So yeah, it's been really cool.
I
Sorry,
think
I'm like
no,
gushing about it. It's just
no,
been so amazing to me. It's
I
like
want to
mind
hear
blowing.
about it. I want to hear about it. And
Yeah.
I think it's important yet to have some kind of continued connection. Because like, okay, someone could take the class like and then don't do anything with it, but then like next year they're like, oh yeah, that Reiki stuff, let me get back into it. And then they
Yeah.
have questions.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's like, oh, I don't have any way of contacting that person that I took the
Yeah.
class with, or they're just, yeah, they don't have that availability.
Yeah. And we're here like offering this transmission of life force energy. So I really believe in the whole concept of what a teacher is, and that doesn't mean like, I don't think as teachers we have to have all of the answers in the universe. I don't think we have to be perfect. I don't think we have to always know things. We just have to be willing to be present with somebody from a heart-based space. So yeah, like I've loved this model because if somebody has a question in a year, and even with my students before this, if somebody came back to me from years, like a lot of my students will come back after 5 years, 6 years, they're like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, and usually I do, unless they've undergone like really huge energetic shifts. Then they read like a different
They
person,
look
and I'm like,
different.
oh my God, yeah, holy Jesus. But that, like, being able to say, I'm here for you, to me is so important, right? And I'm okay with saying, I'm here for you and I have no answers. But I think that first part is really important. And that gets lost. I can't tell you how many students I've met from other lineages who come to me with questions. And I'm like, have you tried asking your teacher, like the one who taught you? Because if you learned in their system, it would be good to have their answer. I'll answer you too, but like,
Yeah, they might have a
take
different
advantage of that relationship, right?
perspective.
And a lot of times people just, they're out of, they don't have that relationship, and it makes it hard when you're seeking and you're growing. Nobody should be growing alone. We're here for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And you definitely inspired me to teach.
Yay.
I was like, oh, I'm not going to do this for like years. And you're like, we'll see about that
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you let me sit in your classes and stuff. So that was really helpful for me, even though, it's a different perspective to take the class and then to sit and like kind of see how the structure and how you present things. And I think that was really
Right?
helpful for me for sure.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's been the fun part for me as a business person, right? And doing this energy work. Like priestesses of old would go sit in a temple, till the land. I don't know. Priestesses of old had all of these things that they did, and the community took care of them, right? They were cared for. And in our modern day culture, it's not really the same way because people don't understand what a priestess does. And we don't always value that spiritual connection in the same way. So, unless you're Christian in a church with tithing, it's quite complicated for energy healers and some massage therapists and other people who probably would have just been priestesses in another life, and I actually use priestess. To me, it's a non-gendered term. I use it, the S for me refers to the divine feminine of the goddess, right? But so man can be a priestess. Like I call men male priests, but I know usually priestesses. but like, yeah, so we have to kind of find our own way in this day and age, healers and priestesses, wise ones. And that oftentimes, like in this culture, means knowing something about business, right? Because we don't just have somebody tithing for us. Unless you want to start a cult, that's a whole nother path. Complicated. So,
A little
and
messy.
yeah, but like even communities, like even community co-ops, a lot of the ones that I've seen that end up quite challenged unless they have a really strong financial model, So I think for me that like I love the business side of doing this energy work and being able to share that knowledge with students as well, because we need it actually. Like we have to know, unless you have other sources of income that allow you to just kind of do what you want to do every day without a regard for that, and some people do. There are a lot of people that are working class that really need to work and then really feel the call to energy work and spirituality so deeply that that really needs to be their full-time thing. So in that case, we need the business acumen to know how to model that and to do that.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that in the Reiki Master, and I thought that was like so helpful. And like I went to art school, so I didn't have any of that structure or knowledge
Yeah.
of like how to do marketing or any of that kind of stuff. So I thought it was like, I think it's really helpful for people to see and learn that it's not just like you're going to go and do healing. Like you have to put a lot of structure and stuff behind it, or else it's going to be chaotic, and you're not going
Yeah.
to you're not going to have any money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and at Healing Heart Reiki, I think I tend to attract, we do attract people who are interested in doing this as a full-time, lifetime thing. So they are looking at career, but that's not a necessity, right? Like I've also
Yeah.
attuned wonderful, amazing, some of my favorite healers. Like I just love their hands on. It just feels so good. They're not professional. They don't ever want to be. They're open to it, but that's not really what they're seeking, right? That's not how it needs to express through their lives. And that's beautiful too. I love all of it. But I think even then it's good for them to have this idea of how that looks, because when we're all holding that consciousness, it really helps to heal the world. It's like, even if that one person who does Reiki is never going to make a living out of it per se, or they don't feel that call to being a priestess or priest, um, with the energy. They just kind of do it for family, and that's beautiful, and that's where they're at. When they've been taught about these other pieces and about that, those identities, then if they have friends that feel that call, they're already holding the new paradigm for those friends. And I think that that's where we're at now. We're ready as a society to start looking more carefully at our presumptions about where energy belongs in the bigger picture, where energy healing belongs. And it's changing massively across the country. Like hospitals now often have Reiki in them. Chaplains now don't have to be Christian. Like there's so much shifting. So I think we all kind of need these teachings to hold the new paradigm, like to honor
Yeah.
our teachers and priestesses and healers as just as important as our doctors and our lawyers and our police officers, you know.
Yeah, I think it's like such a thing, a preconceived notion, like healers or artists have to be like, yeah, struggling.
Yeah.
And yeah, it comes from that, oh, we were taken care of. And if there isn't that structure in place,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be like suffering for having a gift to share to others. Like people view as like
Exactly.
selling out or something.
Right.
And I think a lot of those ideas are changing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think so. I think you're right. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes, you know? Yeah, I love it. And I think that's why, like, again, most people just need healing. A lot of people called to the priestessing work and the goddess mysteries need healing. I think there are many who come into lives where there is a lot of conflict in youth. Most of us have traumas from youth of some sort. Not everybody though. And so we need to know how to heal ourselves and others before we even begin to crack the nut on things like astral travel and talking to deities and being possessed and like, I don't know, all
Yeah,
the
like
things.
slow your roll.
Yeah.
Learn how
Yeah.
to meditate first.
Meditate. Meditation time. Come on. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Well, thank you so much for talking with us, Dailey. I'm going to put your information in our little show notes. So if anyone wants to check out your website and see what classes you got going on, I'm going to be
yeah.
taking a class in like a week or something. So you guys can join
Yeah.
us. That's all
So
about
excited.
shamanic journey and connecting with the upper world. So like ethereal energy, the Akashic records, fun stuff like that. But I'd love to hear, is there any like big dreams or anything you have kicking around that you want to create for Healing Heart Reiki, that you want to put into the energy field of the quantum field?
You know, quantum has been one of my keywords of this year, quantum leaping. But actually, I usually have huge dreams, but I'm in a really different space this year where I feel like I started the year with this strong intention to mainly teach Reiki only classes. And that was part of really making sure that the foundation of the online classes was really solid so that anybody who's taking classes with me, like I feel confident on my end that they're really going to receive all of the teachings that they need, and that those teachings would be the equivalent or better than anything anyone would find in an in-person class, definitely better than anything anyone would find at a retreat, right? So I've been so much in that, like, let's build the foundation kind of mode that I think my vision has been like really laser
Focus.
tight there. But yeah, I mean, I just want to see us all rise and grow. My attention also has been towards alumni of Healing Heart Reiki, and I've been just really holding a lot of love in my heart that there's so much space in the world for all of us to really do our work and to be met by the unique individuals who are called to our energy. And I want to see everybody really abundant in the flow of the love of this work and the love for their own lives. We've had so much death and trauma in the past couple of years. I really want to see everybody that I know, everybody in the community, in a space where they can truly feel this bursting love for their very life. So however I can get that to happen, I'll put my little ego mind towards that, but that's my vision. And it's not, it's not like 10,000 new healers on the planet. That sounds fun, maybe in a couple years, but like it's a vibration that I'm going for this year. That's my big wish for
Energy.
Reiki. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I feel it.
Yay.
Well, thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.